The story of how Jinn led a person to Islam is one that many people find both strange and deeply moving, because it reminds us of the unseen realities that Allah has created and the many ways He guides His servants to the truth. We often think that guidance comes only through human teachers, books, or experiences of hardship and reflection. But the world Allah created is vast, filled with beings and signs that go beyond what our eyes can see. Among these are the Jinn, created from smokeless fire, who live in realms that overlap with ours in ways we do not fully comprehend. Some of them are disbelievers, rebellious, and companions of Shaytan, while others are believers who follow the path of Islam, recite Qur'an, and worship Allah sincerely. When a person says, "Jinn led me to Islam," it may sound unusual, but it is actually in line with what the Qur'an and Sunnah have already told us, that Jinn can hear the Qur'an, believe in it, and even share it with others. There are authentic narrations that during the life of the Prophet Muhammad, a group of Jinn heard the Qur'an when the Prophet recited it in prayer. They were so moved that they returned to their own kind and became callers to Islam, telling their fellow Jinn that a scripture confirming what came before had been revealed, and they believed in it. Allah revealed this event in the Qur'an in Surah Al-Jinn and Surah Al-Aqaf. These verses show us that the message of Islam is not only for human beings, but for all of Allah's creation, including Jinn, and that they too can serve as a means of guidance. When we hear of someone being guided to Islam through an encounter with Jinn, it is often through extraordinary circumstances, sometimes people who dabble in the occult, who play with things like witchcraft, black magic, or communicating with the unseen, find themselves in danger. Some Jinn who are righteous may step in to warn them, to point them toward the Qur'an, to tell them to seek refuge in Allah instead of calling on false powers. There are stories of people hearing Jinn recite Qur'an in moments of crisis, or being told by Jinn to go and speak to an imam, or to read the Book of Allah. At first, they may feel fear, confusion, or disbelief, but over time they realize that Allah is using this strange path to lead them back to Him. The guidance through Jinn does not always come from direct interaction. Sometimes people are tormented by disbelieving Jinn, falling into despair, nightmares, or possession. They seek help, and in that process they come across the Qur'an, Ruqya, and dhikr. As they listen to the words of Allah being recited for their healing, their hearts open, and they find themselves pulled toward Islam. The pain caused by Jinn becomes the very reason they discover the truth. And in some cases, a believing Jinn may assist them, guiding them gently toward the remembrance of Allah, telling them that only Allah can free them from such suffering. Thus, in a paradoxical way, even the harm of Jinn can become a means of guidance to Islam. The most remarkable element of these stories is that they show how Allah's mercy extends through every possible channel. A person far from Islam, drowning in sins or lost in confusion, may find the straight path not because of their own effort, but because Allah sends guidance through the most unexpected means. A human might ignore a book or a lecture, but the shock of an encounter with the unseen jolts them into reflection. They begin to realize the reality of the unseen world, the truth of what the Qur'an has been teaching all along, that this life is not just material, but spiritual. They recognize that there are beings beyond human perception who themselves submit to Allah, and if the Jinn can believe and surrender, then why not them? The Qur'an emphasizes again and again that guidance is entirely in Allah's hands. Allah uses whatever means He wills to bring a heart to light. For some it is loss, for others it is joy, for some it is war, and for others it is peace. For a few rare individuals, it is the strange and hidden world of the Jinn. What matters is not the channel, but the outcome. The moment the heart finally recognizes its creator and bows in sincere submission. When we think about this deeply, it also challenges our mindset as Muslims. Too often we place limits on Allah's guidance, thinking it only works in certain ways. We forget that His power is limitless and His knowledge encompasses all things. The fact that someone could be guided by Jinn reminds us not to underestimate Allah's ability to turn heart. It reminds us also that the unseen world is real, that angels, Jinn, and the Barzakh exist, and that our lives are intertwined with realities beyond our perception. These stories also carry lessons about accountability. Just as Jinn can be Muslims, Christians, Jews, or disbelievers, so too do they share responsibility for their choices. Some among them may actively mislead humans, while others may guide. But ultimately, the one who truly leads to Islam is Allah. The Jinn are only a tool or a sign, a messenger in a hidden form. The responsibility of the human being who experiences this guidance is to take it seriously, to act on it, and to begin the journey of learning Islam properly. To say, Jinn led me to Islam, is not the end of the story. It is only the beginning, the first step into a life of prayer, Qur'an, and submission. When we look into the nature of these experiences, there is also a test in them. Encounters with Jinn can be deceptive. Shaytan and his allies among the Jinn may pretend to be guides while actually leading people into greater misguidance. That is why the foundation must always be the Qur'an and Sunnah. A believing Jinn will only guide a person toward Tawheed, prayer, dhikr, and staying away from shirk and innovation. If a Jinn tells someone to worship them, to commit sin, or to rely on them instead of Allah, then that is the deception of Shaytan. Therefore, those who say they were guided through Jinn must always cross-check their path with the clear teachings of Islam. True guidance always leads to worshiping Allah alone and following the Prophet Muhammad. On a more spiritual level, the idea of Jinn leading someone to Islam reminds us of how vast the Ummah of Muhammad really is. It is not just humans from every race and nation, but even beings we cannot see. When Allah revealed the Qur'an, He sent it as a mercy to all the worlds, and those worlds include the Jinn. Some of them, when they hear the Qur'an, are so moved that they want to spread it to others, even humans. Their faith becomes a mirror for our own, reminding us of the power of Allah's words. Imagine that a being you cannot see, created from fire, is listening to the Qur'an and crying over it, while we sometimes neglect it, letting it sit unread on our shelves. This contrast alone can be a source of awakening for many. Guidance through Jinn also teaches us humility. None of us can say we are safe from error, nor can we say we know all the paths Allah uses to guide. Sometimes He takes a person at their lowest point, terrified by experiences with the unseen, and uses that fear to open the door of faith. Sometimes He shows someone a miracle through the Jinn so that they wake up to the reality of the hereafter. And sometimes He allows a believing Jinn to deliver the message when humans fail to reach a heart. All of this shows the absolute wisdom and mercy of Allah. The journey of someone who was guided by Jinn often continues with deep gratitude. They realize that Allah saved them through extraordinary means, and this makes their faith firm. They become examples for others, showing that guidance can come at any time, in any form, and that no one should despair of Allah's mercy. These stories spread as reminders not for people to seek out Jinn, but for them to seek out Allah, who controls everything, including the unseen. When reflecting on these accounts, we are reminded of the words of the Prophet that Allah looks at our hearts and our deeds, not our appearances or our past. A person may have been lost, dabbling in the harem, even dealing with jinn in sinful ways, yet Allah can flip their heart and make them among the guided. The key lesson is to hold on to that guidance once it comes, to build a life of salah, Qur'an, and obedience. In truth, whether one is guided by hearing the Qur'an, by a kind word from a stranger, by a sudden tragedy, or even by an encounter with jinn, the essence is the same. It is Allah who guides. He uses signs in the heavens and the earth, in the visible and the unseen, to awaken our hearts. And when someone says, Jinn led me to Islam, what they are really saying is that Allah, through His infinite mercy, chose to guide them by means they never expected. It is a testimony to His greatness, His compassion, and His will to save souls from darkness into light.